Hello. Good evening. Back again on a Tuesday night. Yes. We're going to cover three of them today. And I realized that I've been a little remiss in keeping you updated on some of the hearings that have been going on. We had a few very hectic trials. As those of you in the chat and some of you listening will be very familiar with. They were a rough ride, especially coming off a live trial like Murdoch. For that being a YouTube reason, and also for some personal reasons, I'll take a little step back a little bit to refocus. But I think I'm ready now to keep you up to date again on some of the more active ones that we were following. I would like to finish them up and then perhaps lighten the load for true crime a little bit. I think you'll all agree that it is impossible to cover every true crime thing out there, and that was never my intention. There are hot cases left and right. The media covers them well. You've got tons of legal channels that you can go to for all of those. I like the ones with little bits of twists in something that intrigues me a little bit, and that's when I started to do it, the ones I would cover anyway on my own. And I will continue to do that. But you may notice a little trickle down as things start to tie up with the caseloads that we already have. Actively, we are still following the Scientology case with Masterson through sentencing, and probably even the civil lawsuit, and a couple of other pertinent Scientology cases there, because those cases actually do have a lot to do with the way we handle law in the United States, the way an organization that actually comes across as a damaging cult can claim religious status in special treatment whenever they feel like it, while not acting like a religious or very upright organization. Not my intent to come out here and bash Scientology, but hey, that would be the main reason to cover it there. As far as Masterson, y'all know, if you've been following, why I am interested in that case, and it is all about the way we legally represent consent in the different versions of it in different states and all over, and the way federal law is addressing it, and how victims are often still blamed. Also, the statute of limitations, the changes that have been going on all over our country, mostly here on the East Coast, especially in New York, which has afforded more opportunity to victims to come forward after a traumatic event, taking some of those timelines off, especially if there's great trauma or extenuating circumstances, as there were in the Masterson case. The other cases that we are covering that are not mentioned here are still E. Jean Carroll still has another case out against ex-President Trump in regards to the same defamation issue in her assault. She did win the first one, and she is now waiting because the second part of it happened while he was in office, and that is very interesting to me because that will set legal precedents. Because for the first time, they're going to say just holding office doesn't make you immune. You actually had to be performing your duties. The Supreme Court kicked it back, stating they didn't have enough evidence that that he was actually performing. Like, they didn't know what we the people of the United States were asking him to do when he bashed E. Jean Carroll on stage personally. Um, they're trying to say it might be a little more personal. They pushed it back. So, like, a weird legally, that's tantalizing to me, and I think that you all would be interested in it too. It's going to change things. It's going to change things a lot. Um, Other cases that we're following are Sarah Boone. We're going to cover that today. Okay, the Moscow murders. They are on the list with Bryan Kohberger. It's still on the list. We're finishing up with Lori Vallow, still to go through sentencing. We'll be talking about her today. I am still wavering on whether I will dive into Chad Daybell's portion of this. I have not decided. If it's a public trial, we'll see. But after experiencing what the evidence is going to be from going through the Lori Vallow case, I'll be honest with you. I don't think I have the stomach for it. It's horrific. and I applaud those that can. But just knowing about it is bad enough for me. I don't want to see it or promote it again. I want justice, obviously, and I'm going to have to weigh out how I feel about what legally might be there for explanation or be misunderstood. Or, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a layperson, but I know how these things look to the average person. And really, I'm out here just to talk to you about somebody who likes it the way you do and try to give you the information as straight as I can and point you to the references and point you where it's coming from in some of the issues. I'm not an expert on any of it. If you're looking for that, you need a legal channel. Okay. This is a entertainment commentary opinion channel. Smash up, sometimes with humor. My true crime doesn't often have humor. It does a little bit here and there, but not as often as I feel. I think that it's going to, always grateful. I see your comment, and I'm sorry I'm not greeting everyone who's still coming in. I did greet those in the beginning, but thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I know it's not easy to keep track when I disappear for a while and then just pop up. So I do appreciate every single person who showed up today. I do. I'm grateful. Always, I agree with you. Chad Daybell's trial is going to be a repeat and very rough of the evidence that was presented in the Lori Vallow case. And that one wasn't even public for everybody to see. We didn't get to see, but we talked about it, right? Like, they didn't allow the cameras, but just the evidence, the words, what they presented, the brief stuff that did get out afterwards was horrific and horrible. And I'm just, I don't know if I'm going to do something like that. There are several other cases, like the Stephen Smith investigation into his murder in North Carolina, that's been reclassified as a homicide, and there's an active investigation. There are the rest of the financial cases from Alex Murdaugh. That is like forever. There are indictments there forever, and I'm interested in that because of all that one. I'll tell you, that one's about the drama, because that one writes like a suspense movie. Oh, it's got everything. It's got murder, all this financial crimes. It's got a big connected family. It's got all the rumor and speculation, multiple civil suits, over 100 charges. In 18 indictments listing Alex Murdaugh now. So many players. It's so involved that legally it's juicy just because of the amount that you have to go through and all of the different things. The amount of civil suits, including the Mallory Beach suit for wrongful death. Yeah, so much. What happened to the Satterfield family, all of that. It does make me want to keep following up on it loosely, and letting you know as things progress here and there. Another big case I'm still following, but I do owe you another video or a live on, is Marilyn Manson. There has been a lot of changes there. I'm still going to be following that up. It's not gone. Regardless what anybody says about the slap and all of that, I'll make it more clear when I get into greater detail later. But it's not the dead deal. The civil case is still going on. Okay. And there's new rulings on what cases can come back to. So that's going to be ongoing for a while. That is still live, regardless of what people want you to believe. And as we saw, that even after a verdict, you not just have to say that, even after a verdict, okay, and everything came through, okay, today people are still in my DMs about Depp versus Heard. Today I still saw massive reporting going on because Johnny Depp finally got his payment from the insurance company, because let's be clear, Amber Heard isn't paying a dime of any of this. There are lawsuits from her insurance companies back and forth. They're suing each other, they're suing her, all this. I'm still getting slammed by Amber Heard fans whenever you speak. I would expect to get a whole bunch more today. But I see it everywhere, still on the social platforms, all of them, all over Facebook, Instagram, all over Twitter. They're out in droves, okay, trying to drum up more for her. And there's some feature documentary things she's going to be coming out with in a couple of weeks too, that more about being the victim. But the suit is settled, and she lost, and that stands. Whether he negotiated the amount or not, it's still stands. Okay. And she didn't prove her case. And I'm just going by the facts of the case. And she lost. That's that. But they don't think so. So just if you go and speak about it out there, be careful because they're out in droves, boy. It was pretty rough out there yesterday and today. So on that, let's start with Sarah Boone. Okay. Um One last thing before I move to Boone is that if you have any questions on any of the other cases we're covering, if I didn't mention one that you're interested in that you thought we were going to go forward with, it could just be that's not actively right on my mind right now. Doesn't mean anything. Just hit me up in the DMs. You can still talk to me about anything. I have never turned any of you away with questions on the back of my videos, in my DMs, any of it. I'm open to discuss it on why I won't cover it or why I am covering it anytime you want. Okay. But um definitely still an open door, and you can actually help me with that because it appears based on again the way notifications got out, and I take some of the blame here because I've been a little remiss in producing content on a regular basis like I was, and that does mess with the algorithm and it does make things difficult. But I would like to come out here and make sure that people are actually seeing it and hearing it and making it worthwhile for everybody. I don't want to waste anybody's time, so you can actually help me by liking the video, by sharing the videos, by sharing the announcements for the videos, or even by commenting any of your questions or anything like that on the back of any of the videos. Apparently, that's what YouTube needs to see to make sure that I exist. So I don't know. I still thought I existed anyway, but apparently they don't. But you could help with that, like I said. But thanks. Okay, so now that I've done the YouTube thing, let us go on. Let us move on to Boone. Okay. Sarah Boone, just a little bit of refresher. Orange County, Florida. Sarah Boone in February, I believe it was the 24th of February, 2020, more than 3 years ago. She has been charged with second-degree murder of her husband, George Torres Jr. He was 42. And Sarah Boone has been nicknamed the Suitcase Killer. Okay, this is the suitcase case. Apparently, Sarah's words and statement convey that they were horsing around, they were playing a game of hide and seek, and she zipped George into a suitcase, and he died. Okay, and she said she got tired and went to sleep, and she didn't realize, that he couldn't get out or whatever. Unfortunately for Sarah, her own phone had videos of her sitting there taunting him while he was requesting to be let out because he couldn't breathe, and her laughing at him and ridiculing him. So, prosecution the very next day, after she called 911 to say she found him in the suitcase, not able to breathe, and took him out and tried to revive him, they came. They said it was too late. He was definitely well beyond being able to be resuscitated. The very next day, after looking at the contents of her phone, Sarah was arrested because her statements did not match up with that video very well. Sarah's been in jail without bond ever since. Sarah Boone is also the letter writer. We call her the mass letter writer to the judge and to all her attorneys. Some people think that it's a little crazy. They're not crazy like Storch's, Letitia Storch's. Remember the Storch trial? Letitia did that also, and hers were a little bit crazy. Okay. I really don't think Sarah Boone's crazy. I don't. I think she's clever. She's writing because she can't get any response or answers. Now, she doesn't have a lot of money, so she's going with the public defender, and they get assigned. Her first one, Padilla, they did actually, she complained so much about not hearing from him and this and that, not getting what she wants, that finally when they did get in contact and were working together, the relationship was quite contentious, and Padilla asked to be let go because they could not come to an agreement together. And so, he was let go. 5 attorneys later, okay, all for conflicts of interest in this and that, all getting assigned. Sarah's been reported, writing about not getting in touch with their attorneys, not knowing when dates are for the trial, and then just claiming she doesn't have any information in regards to her case and that this is hindering her ability to have a fair trial. And in a way, this treatment in this go around is actually hindering her due process. I can see that, and I think most of the law channels will be saying the same thing. I've heard it from quite a few over the last couple of months that it's not a good look for anything. Okay, but here's the thing. Okay, now Sarah's on her, I think it's her sixth or seventh attorney, who's Frank Bankowitz. Okay, now Frank was appointed in July 11th of 2022. Okay, um, going on 11 months ago. Okay, they've met quite a few times. Now Frank has shown up by Zoom to some of the hearings. Okay, and recently, the judge for this for Sarah Boone, who is Wayne C. Wooten, by the way, Judge Wooten. He, they just recently, I think it was the end of March, had another hearing, and Frank Bankowitz came forward and talked about in his practice, some people that are working on the cases had deaths in the family. There's been COVID. He himself was down with COVID for quite some time. He had valid reasons, okay? And now he's presenting the delay in the case is a lot because he's unable to find an expert to support his defense. Now, Frank Bankowitz filed that his defense is going to be for spousal abuse. It's going to be a battered woman syndrome. It's going to be that whatever happened, her unclear thinking in the matter was all due to the treatment of George Torres to her. Now, in my previous live streams and videos on Sarah Boone, when we discussed this case, and they're all listed in the playlist below. YouTube will let you search her name in there, and they're all in the title. If I cover it, it'll say Boone. Now she and he, George, do have a violent episodes. There are documented domestic abuse filings in different areas all over the place that actually could say that there was abuse going on by both parties during their relationship. So it's not it's not uncommon that this would happen. But what is uncommon is, well, maybe not, because it is a public defender, and they have to go by what is paid by the state, for defense. Because Sarah doesn't have the money to do it. We've got no expert that will accept the fees to come forward and testify about this for them. He's having great difficulty. He says he's contacted 3 or 4. The judge understands it. And so we got another delay. Now, Sarah Boone's case should have gone to trial in April. It was scheduled to go forward. And then at the end of March, they agreed. Between everything that was happening with the multiple lawyers, the letters, the delays, that she deserves to get the best defense she can. And I do believe that Frank Bankowitz is trying. He is. He's got another delay. Now the trial is for July 24th. Okay. And July 24th this year, like next month. And next month on the 11th will be the pretrial hearing, unless, of course, there's going to be something else. And again, she's in jail all this time since February 25th of 2020, no bail, waiting. And this is what I think some of her frustration in letters are. And speaking of the letters, let's just have a look. Okay. Sarah Boone. Whoops, we don't want that one. We want this one. Sarah Boone wrote a 7-page letter. You could find this on Court TV's Reddit, on the True Crime Reddit. It's everywhere. It's also on Twitter. All you have to do is just search the words. This one was written, okay, on May 15th. This one is less than a month old. Okay. Sarah wrote this one to the judge and to her attorney and the whole wide world, okay? Because I'm not going to read every part of this, but basically her letter, she talks about perspective first off, and she wonders like how many of us are going to actually go and define the word perspective for her, But, she's saying, Perspective is the science of painting or drawing so that objects are represented and have a proof depth and distance, the aspect in which a subject of its parts or are mentally viewed, a view of things, a way to express it. Okay, an extension of their true relationship or relative inheritance. And I think she's bringing a valid point here. What she's saying is that she's she's saying she doesn't have any information about what's going on, and I'm saying that, like, most of this letter clearly indicates that Sarah Boone knows what's going on out here in the media. That that there was like a she actually is very careful here. She does go against the judge. She makes some really rude comments. I mean, she does. I can't really support her in that. But when she's talking about the perspective of not having any help, just sitting there in the jail, people that don't want to work with her, I mean, it is making her look bad. Now, is she to blame for a lot of that? Yes. Is the system to blame for a lot of that? Yes. Okay. It's a double edged sword. I mean, she's not actually helping her case with all of this, I don't believe. But she did have a very valid point. Her letter of March 22nd did get uploaded entered into evidence incomplete, missing a whole page, missing a whole reference because she wrote on two sides. She then in April rewrote that letter again, sent it on just sides to send it in. But she says, she brings the point up. If I can't trust you to actually turn a piece of paper over to see that there's writing on the other side, I mean, how do I know you even read it? Obviously, if you know there's a whole page missing and it didn't continue and you didn't turn the page over to look, you're not even reading it. The only thing you're doing with my letters is just scanning them in as evidence. No one is addressing any of the issues I bring up. And she understands that that's a problem, but she's not doing it the right way. The only way the judge can address any problem she brings up is through motions and through lawyers and through the system. This is not a way to do it. Okay, but she seems to think that this direct line in is just going to handle everything, and it's just not. Okay. She goes on about perspective and like, let me just say, I don't really want to read all of that. I do want to point out, okay, that she keeps saying that all of these disadvantages to her need to stop. That her truth needs to be heard, and it is her right. And that you can't give a person rights and then just think that they're not going to act on them. Okay. She's asking them to get it together and start working together. I really think her attorney is trying to. I do. The last couple of appearances, I really do. But then she takes a hit at the judge, and saying that he's not reading or addressing anything in the letters, using the reference I just told you about with the letter that went through and got entered. It's like, she's talking about that she doesn't see her attorney enough. She says that she's only seen Frank Bankowitz 6 times since he has been appointed last July. Now, granted, like, maybe he didn't have anything to report to. It doesn't mean he's not working on anything. He is in the court. He is addressing things. He is trying to get it. Okay. I don't, she just, this letter is so rich. She says that she's had people call for her and that he doesn't even return the calls to the people that she has calling to actually address him or to get information to him, that he's got a failure to communicate. I mean, really, all that's going to happen complaining like this about your attorney is that you're going to get another attorney and it's just going to be another delay. I mean, she's just going to end up sitting in jail even longer. Okay. She's blaming the judge that he's doing nothing, that he's allowing and enabling her rights to be violated. The First Amendment, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth, the Eighth, and the 14th, if anybody wants to look them up. I mean, she really goes in. She said she is being judged for her legislative letters that she writes, and you're submitting them, but you're not actually addressing any of the issues that are in them. You're using them as evidence for what? Like, it occurs in the progress of 3 to 3. If I don't have anyone to talk to about the progress of my case, if I can't get any information, about the progress of my case. What else am I supposed to do? I mean, it's obviously that she's very frustrated. Okay. And it's obvious that she's very serious about this. Okay. All right. She also wants to know how it is that everybody has everything out there already about her case. Now, this part, this got to me because, well, we're seeing that now with multiple cases, aren't we? We're going to be talking about Vallow, and we're going to be talking about Kohberger too. And I'm going to try to keep the rest of Boone short because, baby, basically, what she starts to bring up in this letter longer and longer, and I'm going to try to get you an actual clip to this letter. I made a presentation of the copies. I only have photographs of the letter, and if I have to, I'll just make a short video presenting each page and link it for you in the description. But I didn't have time to do that yet today. But in regards to one other thing she brings up is now she starts talking about why isn't there a gag order on all of this? Why is there no gag order? You know, I don't know. Is she watching what's going on? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. She's listening, I guess, or she's getting information from somewhere, but she's talking about the media, talking about the suitcase, that video being out. Her interview is out. Okay. A lot of the evidence they have against her is out on the internet already. Okay. Before she gets to trial. You could understand a defendant's point of view about that because her side's not out yet. Only that. So could she make the case that she's being pre-tried, prejudged? She could. And is it uncomfortable for her? Obviously, it would be uncomfortable for anyone. Okay. So in one way, she does have a valid point. But the way that she's actually addressing it is not going to get her anywhere. Not going to get her anywhere. This needs to come from her attorney. Her attorney needs to request the gag order because of her being judged ahead of time and not able to get a fair trial. Okay. Um, she's in Florida. Okay. They've got different rules there. It's going to be up to the judge there on what they do, on whether the trial will be open, whether everything will be sealed. But right now, it's not. Nothing's sealed. There is no gag order. Okay. They don't have the easy access to public records, like, free or anything like that, but you can get the information. Okay. And she is complaining about it. That video on the suitcase is everywhere. We played it here on my channel before. It's been all over TikTok. It's been everywhere. The interviews, hours of interviews that she went through are on her outside when they first came to investigate the scene, her sitting outside on the sidewalk and constantly going back and forth, all of that and her behavior. And the thing is she says she's being judged and people are putting opinion on it. It's going to taint the jury pool. And does she have a point? I'd like to know what you guys think about that. Does she actually have a point? She's asking for all of us to look at it. Look at how people are being treated in the criminal system. Now, if you kill somebody, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for you, but I do have a lot of respect for the law. And I do want the system to work right. Okay. And I'm not actually supporting her as against her crime. But some of the points that she brings up in regards to what I'm doing right here, having the ability to talk about her case before her case is in a courtroom. That's a big issue. It might seem ridiculous that I would even want to talk about it since I'm right here talking about it and even bring the subject up, but it's big right now everywhere. I kind of agree that we do open transparency in courtrooms is definitely something that has a benefit. Because one thing I learned in Depp versus Heard was that media was portraying it one way when we know what we heard in the trial. It depended on who was siding with who and who in the media decided to side with who and put things out in a certain way. It was not straight reporting on exactly what happened in the courtroom. It was all skewed. And so if we didn't have the actual courtroom footage to go back and look and the evidence presented to look at, we wouldn't know the truth. We wouldn't. We still now would be unaware of what was going on. Okay. But then on the other hand, you look at the Masterson trial where you're protecting victims, okay, and you don't want cameras in there. But they were allowed to have media go in there. And the media that reported, even though some of them were totally against Scientology, were pretty good in reporting everything that happened unbiasedly. The statements from both sides and the testimony, okay, and even the issues that came up. And that's what I would hope would keep happening, you know. So you understand, like, sometimes you can't really have it all the way open, but in that case, at least they did let media in, and at least information was coming out. Now, it still could get skewed by both sides, absolutely. But I think the reason that cameras are not going to be allowed in some of these cases going forward, and judges are really going to have to think hard, is because they do have to protect the rights of the defendant. They do deserve a fair trial. That's how it is here in America. That is the principle we all stand on. Everybody deserves that right. Okay, everybody has that right, and it's our job to uphold it, right? So you don't want them tried in the public media. And I don't think any of us could sit here today and say that that's not happening every single day. Every single day. All of her stuff's out already. We all, whether we want to think of it or not, have formed somewhat of an opinion about Sarah Boone. Have we not? I mean, I know I have. I know I saw what I saw. I know I'm trying real hard to wait. I'm trying real hard to wait until the trial actually happens. But, the bigger issue is, it does prejudice the jury pool. It is all out there. The media needs to be more responsible. That would be my point to make. The media. If media is not allowed in the courtroom, I would say the person to blame is media. They're the ones doing it. Okay. They're the ones making it very difficult for judges to balance things. Okay. They are making it a little difficult. More black and white reporting would be nice with the facts. I know that sensationalism sells papers. What used to be what they say. What does it say now? Minutes, seconds, airtime? I don't know. But I do know that the sensationalism of things is what they all look for, because that is what moves things forwards and keeps them successful. And I get that. I think you could do it a little more carefully. I think you can do it a little more respectfully. Okay. I really do. And I hope that when we finally do come to trial with Sarah Boone in July, I do want it to be open, because there's no benefit to her to close it now, because everything's out there. The only benefit to her having it open is that we get to see her side of it. We're going to get to see her side of it, and that deserves to be out there just as much as the other stuff was. Do you know what I mean? Like, for her, I don't understand why she wants a gag order now, when she's really going to need to go in there and defend herself as to why this happened, because it did happen. And in this case particular, I'm curious as to whether she'll take the stand, because it's only her word as to why things happened the way they happened. And she can only explain why she took that video on the couch the way she did. She may need to testify for herself, which would be very unusual in a murder trial, but it just may come down to that. I mean, the way I'm looking at it, I don't see how she can't. Hey, Jujubee. Comment going up. She doesn't need a gag order on her case. Asking for a gag order puts more attention on her case. Zip your lips, Sarah. You just keep sinking yourself. I'm kind of with you on that. And I think it's not going to help, because her side needs to come out too when it finally goes to trial, right? I mean, she needs as much, the thing is that she's had so many different lawyers. Nothing's coming out from her lawyers. Nobody is coming out. We don't have anything from her, okay, to benefit her. Grace Case, thank you for the message. Those I cannot put up. They're not coming up in the StreamYards thing, but I will say I'm one otter old. Thank you for being with me for a year as a member. I appreciate you. Mousy, I'm still a baby otter. You're just under a year old, but I appreciate you also. I appreciate even if you were only here for a day. I would appreciate it. Autistic Shield, just over a year. Thank you so much for the comment and for those posts. That's really cool. And Mark Caesar, welcome, newbie. I do appreciate you using your messages to send these through. Thank you. And thank you all for being here and contributing to the conversation. Yeah. Yeah, always I'm Juju, I'm thinking like always, I'm thinking around 7 already. I know Padilla was one of the first in the beginning. But I don't know. Yep. Right? Always I've lost count too. I'm looked through the notes and the Google Doc, and I'm thinking Bankowitz is number 7, but I'm sure if I'm wrong, you're going to come up with that Google Doc and fix me up, you know. Yep, media is still reporting Depp versus Heard incorrectly, and it's infuriating. Exactly, it is. And it's because of the larger movements and organizations that are involved. Like, kind of get their struggle, but I am disappointed in their lack of integrity here. I really am. Yep. Hey, Jin and Sean and Liam, and anyone else I didn't mention. I do appreciate that you're here. But on that, hey, Rocket Couch. Um, I I don't really have much else to say about Boone because, like, there is a lot of evidence out. You've all seen it. We've presented it as it started coming out. There's going to be a pretrial hearing on July 11th, and of course, we're going to get updated then. That's not that far away. That's less than a month away. They've got a long haul. I mean, it's only been since the end of March that her attorney said he couldn't get an expert witness to testify for her. And that's a huge issue. Okay, so like there are concerns about the case, and I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen in July. I would hope for her sake that things pull together a little bit better, but I know that these things take so long once you get expert witnesses and everything else involved, and they start challenging things. It would be very difficult for them to do all of this, get the report, get it over to Discovery, do the whole thing before the 11th. I don't even we haven't even heard a peep that they found anybody yet. So there's nothing coming out on it. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it actually does not go through on July. But we shall see. We shall see. We shall see. Okay. So next up, Lori Vallow. And I don't even like to say the name. But all right. She got found guilty. We put out the verdict. Everybody was happy. We were following the case. This is great. Okay, we do have sentencing on Vallow is going to be July 31st. That sentencing date came for, Judge Stephen Boyce put that out a while ago. We got the verdict on May 12th. She was guilty on all charges. She's facing life in prison. The death penalty, as we had stated before, was removed, partly because of some delays in prosecution, in filings, and discovery issues and things like that. It was kind of a back and forth between the defense attorneys and Lori Vallow and the judge in regards to timely issues and force of her right to a speedy trial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was kind of that. She has a fairly good attorney, Jim Archibald. Okay. And of course, towards the end of May, Jim Archibald filed an appeal for Lori Vallow for a brand new trial. Okay. A brand new trial. And one of the reasons was because of a juror interview. There was a juror, Sal Hernandez, who came out a couple of days after the verdict. And they are allowed to. Judge Boyce said that they could. Okay, he said you're allowed to talk now. Your service is done. But if you get harassed or anything, let us know and talk to us. Like, be fair, because they're not going to get called again. Sal Hernandez is within his rights to speak to anybody he wants. So he spoke to Nate Eaton from East Idaho News. Okay, and they had a nice interview. But during that interview, And this is part of the appeal request from Archibald. Uh, the murder of Charles Vallow came up, and they talked about the open case in Arizona. And Nate Eaton mentioned the body cam footage of Charles Vallow talking to the police prior to his death. Okay. Um, and Sal Hernandez nodded. That's all he did. He nodded when he spoke about it. Okay. He didn't say, yeah, we saw it in the trial or anything like that. Okay. But some of his other statements, which I'll get to, did make it an issue. So he nodded. Okay. And you might be thinking, okay, big deal. So what? Well, it is a big deal because the defense is saying that he knew about this footage and that he based this murder conviction of Lori Vallow based on information that wasn't presented in trial, because that information was not in the trial. The Charles Vallow's murder was mentioned, and the case was mentioned, but within certain parameters. Okay, and it is still open. That case is still going forward. Okay, well, Saul Hernandez then did another interview later that kind of debunks this whole thing. I mean, it appears that Jim Archibald, as he should, as her defense attorney, is just going anywhere he can to try to get a new trial here, because she is looking at life in prison. And if he was, if I was in Lori Vallow's shoes, I'd be fighting tooth and nail too, rather than spend my life in Lori. Although I would never have done what she did. But that is his job. You can't fault him for doing his job. The nitpicking stuff of trying to throw the juror under the bus was a little much. Okay, and it's not going to go through because the prosecution has already answered that. And so has Sal Hernandez, the juror. He actually did another interview that clarified that he didn't know that information that he nodded to until after the trial was over and he watched a documentary on it with his wife. Okay, and so he knows about it, but it wasn't part of the decision. But he did make some other statements. He did say that 2 days prior to coming up with the guilty verdict, he was not going to convict her of murder. And that it took looking at the evidence again. He clarified they looked at the evidence again and that he was persuaded. They're using that also. Okay. They're also using the typo in the indictment, which is the stupidest thing to me. But if she gets a new trial because of this typo, and let me just explain this typo. In the indictment, there was a clerical error, and it had to do with the code that was listed for the money with Ty Lee. Remember that Lori Vallow was had absconded with Ty Lee's Social Security and also with JJ's. Okay, and so there were charges there under the grand theft codes. Okay, under thievery codes. Okay, and there was an actual code difference between intent to deprive and intent to deceive. The indictment was for intent to deceive onto where that money was going and who it was supposed to be for. Okay, and not intent to deprive. Okay, and because deprive was the one listed first, and the judge did do an order during the trial, it came up, and it was allowed to be corrected on the indictment, so that when everything went through the verdict and sentencing, we knew exactly what we were looking at. And when it went to the jury, it was explained in the indictment the difference and to why it got corrected and where it stood now. Now, the time for defense to object, and granted they did, was during the trial, and they did. Okay. But the judge said it was more important to keep everything. It was a small clerical error. It's not the biggest part of the indictment. Okay. Well, that is up in the appeal also. Okay. They're saying, defense is saying that Lori Vallow, that the Judge Stephen Voice, did not give clear jury instruction on how to review evidence to the jury, that they were going against evidentiary evidence and character evidence and not knowing the difference between the two. They said that came up with Charles Vallow. They said that that's coming up with like the indictment part. Also, because during the indictment, in the charges, it says several times in the charges. It says known or unknown co-conspirators, and that defense was put on alert by prosecution early on that there could be up to 5 people involved, and yet only 2 have been charged. And they're trying to get a new trial for that. Now, prosecution has come back against them with a filing that says it doesn't matter because Lori Vallow was the one on trial. It doesn't matter how many other people we name. We were prosecuting Lori Vallow. It's not anything that's even pertinent. Okay? And I kind of agree with them. What does it matter? I mean, there could be 20 people there. There was only one person on trial in that courtroom at that time. The cases were severed. Okay? That known or unknown clause statement in the indictment, in the charges, doesn't really mean that much. It just was open because of current ongoing investigation and everything, and there were so many people involved. Okay. Yes, Mousy, you know what? I'm going to put this up because I actually agree with it. Honestly, y'all, if they happy dead to rights, I'm just going to say, hey, let's get it over with. I think in Boone and Vallow's cases, like, that definitely would have solved a lot of things. Mark, I hope you can hear me. I was silent for a minute while I changed screens, but I hope it's better now. Okay. Let's go. Okay. Is it common for clerical errors like that to be corrected on the fly, or would it always be determined a mistrial? You could get a mistrial depending on the degree of it, especially because it has to do with why the person was charged. But because this was the minor part of the charge and it was definitely no big difference in sentencing, guilt, or anything else in evidence, it was a clerical. It's like a digit, Mark. The difference between intent to deprive and intent to deceive is it's like when you do the codes, it's like, and I'm just making this code up. This isn't the code. Like it's like 620 period 22 subs chapter AB1, and maybe it's AB4. Okay. It's so far on the other side of it, and it did not have to do that much. I mean, she was convicted of it, okay, because of the grand theft, because of the social security monies that were used after their deaths. She did get convicted of it, but it's the difference between intent to deprive and intent to deceive. She took the money. They proved it. It would be it would be not serving justice if they actually give her a mistrial for that, for those digits, because that happened during the trial. They corrected during the trial. I can't see it. What could happen is the judge's order could come under review by other judges, and hopefully they will see that. I think he actually handled the law pretty well there, but it is an iffy issue. It could happen. Yeah, it could happen. You're right, Mark. It could go just because of that. Okay, because the person that is being prosecuted has to actually has the right to know exactly what they're being charged for, has to have it all opened up. And it is the defense's right to pick up any little thing that they find. And those were they find. Now, when you put the 3 of them together, honestly, people, do you actually see a reason for a mistrial here? Does any of that have to do with the evidence that convicted her? Do you think that known or unknown conspirators is anything to do with the evidence that convicted her? A typo in the indictment has nothing to do with the evidence that the jury heard. Okay. And what about what the juror said? What about what the juror said about Charles Vallow in not understanding what happened there? I don't think that should be in there either. I think they could have pushed more. I'm confused actually, and I have to check out some of the legal channels because I'm surprised they didn't push more on her being prejudiced against her religious belief. Because that's a pretty hot topic these days. That might have had more weight. That came to character. that played to the jury like she was out of her mind and fanatical and just wanted to do whatever she wanted to get her way. Hmm. I hear you guys, right? You're all saying you're kind of with me. So cool. Um, I don't think that there's a lot here. I'll be surprised if it gets granted. But we'll see. We'll see. Sentencing is supposed to be the end of July. That's not that far away. I do not think that it will be live. I'm not sure. If it is, I will capture it. If they do a video on it, I'll make a short one for you to follow up. We'll try to do it. Okay. If they do it live, if you want, we'll do it live and talk about it again. Okay. Well, the judge gets to set the sentencing on this one, and as far as I know, Daybell's trial is still on for June of next year. Okay. All right. The other thing I wanted to talk about in regards to Lori is that with Lori, there's in the sentencing, you know how the victims' families can come forward, and also for the defendant or the accused, the guilty party, uh you can have people speak for you for leniency and etc. And the judge is now weighed on who can and cannot actually speak uh for Laura during this trial. Okay. um During the actual sentencing, because that all has to happen before he actually gives the sentence. All right. To just put up Lori while we finish talking about her here. There we go. So that's Jim Archibald, is the one over there um on the far side with the dark blue stripe tie. I do believe the other one is last named Ball, but I would have to double check on that. I think his name was Jim Ball. I'm not sure. I'll have to just double check. Um, or Bell. Maybe it was Bell. A lot of lawyers. A lot of lawyers. Yeah. Well, I know always no reason based on what the defense is using. I kind of agree. I do agree with that. Okay. All right. I'm getting to the like StreamYards is not helping me with these comments at all today. All right. So I think technically that typo shouldn't matter, but strictly speaking, it is a foothold that they may be able to. Exactly, because we do expect the legal system to be precise. But in all honesty, the statute doesn't really change, and it doesn't change whether she was convicted guilty of it. It didn't change the evidence or anything. I don't know. And like always says, it just feels as if the defense is grasping at any minuscule reason, and that's their job, you know and that's definitely that's it. Here's a good one. Does not having unknown conspirators, which the investigators don't exist, change the facts of the case? It doesn't change the evidence against her, but it does change like who else could get charged with the same evidence. Okay. Um, Lori, they Lori Vallow was unable to prove it could have been anybody else. She had that opportunity to do that during the trial, Liam. I get what you're saying. That there is something there, because if you're saying there were more people involved, how do we know this one didn't do that and this one didn't do that and this one didn't do that? Remember, she was specifically charged with murder based on conspiracy. They didn't say she took a hammer and did this. Okay. They're saying that her actions and everything caused these murders and that she was involved, and it's more of a conspiracy type thing. And she's directly involved, and there's no evidence to say she didn't do it. And at that point, she had the opportunity to present evidence that it could not have been her, and she didn't. So in that light, it doesn't matter how many other people they named. Okay. What they're saying is that more people were involved, conspirators. I guess, that was their way when they indicted her, to make sure that certain people testified and gave statements in all honesty. We heard from her niece we heard from people close to her sister, her son testified against her. Her son's testimony was quite damaging against her. So was her sister's in regards to her actions afterwards. And I think they're talking about the dead brother, Alex Cox, who they cannot put charges on. They may even be talking about other family members and relatives that may have things that they knew, but not necessarily guilty of the conspiracy of murder. Maybe they conspiracy to continue the crazy thinking that went on. Perhaps they knew, but did not think it would go that far. Like they had information. Do you know what I mean, Liam? Like, but I get what you're saying because that would be a valid point. If there's somebody else that could be charged for the murder, that does affect the case. But I think that was more about the conspiracy of the murder. Okay. Yep. I wonder what it was like to talk to Lori Vallow. Hmm. Do you really? You know what, Juju? I have actually thought of that. And I don't think I could make it through the conversation. I think she'd get under my skin quickly. I do. I don't think I'd be able to hold myself very well, actually. Okay. Uh, Mousy, I'm with you. Okay. Hey, Juju. Mm, oh, see, they all kind of agree. Like that's what I'm thinking. Like, Juju, do you really think that you could get through that conversation? Like, mm, holding yourself together, you know? Yeah, yeah, conspiracy to continue all that crazy stuff. Like, you know what I'm talking about, Juju. That's exactly what it was. That's most of that conspiracy was. Record says seriously. That part that bothers me is that people have gotten off for technicalities like that, and they do often. Often, and I'm a little bit worried about that, but I'm hoping it doesn't. Yes, Jude, and my heart does break for her son also having to go through that trial and say what he said, and not only just to say what he said about the trial, but to have that realization that that's who your mother is. That's what she did. Like he has no doubt. He sat on that witness stand and said, "I have no doubt you did this. How could you do this to me and everybody else?" That was one of the most heart-wrenching things that I heard through the heart trial. Regardless of the conditions of the bodies and how they got there and all of that. And God, does my heart go out for everyone who loves Tylee and JJ, everyone involved, and even Tammy. I mean, don't forget, Tammy Daybell is dead, and she's been convicted of the conspiracy for that death also. Okay. No. Mm. All of the families. It's just heart-wrenching, but yeah. Mm. Or that they don't name if there's no other conspirators, then it isn't relevant. If there are others, but she can't show that she's less culpable, she's still guilty. Exactly. I don't think she should get a mistrial for it because the evidence was about her and Chad, who is named. Okay. They were the key components in the conspiracy that was laid out. Okay. So I don't see how that's going to take. But like I said, I'm not a lawyer, and there may be something legally there that the judge is going to pinpoint on that. I'm very curious to see how it plays out, and I hope that the ruling comes through quickly. Juju says we have to take bets on how many minutes we could maintain with her. I don't think I'd make it double. I don't think I could, Juju. I don't think I could. I really don't. On a more serious note, I have plenty of questions, but I don't think Lori Vallow would be capable of answering them. I don't think she'd take it seriously, any of the questions that I had. I don't think she wants to give those answers. I mean, look at this picture. I purposely picked this picture. This was at the verdict. That is just annoyed. Okay. There is no remorse. This is just annoyed. This is like, really, people, you're that dumb, you convicted me? Like, oh man. Like now I gotta go through a mistrial. Like I annoyed. That's what I got there. She's just like bothered. Like now she can't get on with the life. She did all this to have a life with Chad Daybell. And you know what? Regardless of that, she's not going to have a life with Chad Daybell. And I'm really happy about that. especially since that seems to be the key motive here, selfishness, in wanting to start over a different life, something in her head to prove all of this just went off. Yes, yes, I agree with you. Record, this one's off her rocker. I do. But she's also sanely enough to be calculating enough to get what she wants. And that's dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. And I'm glad that the jury saw it for that. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Thank you for that, Rocket Couch. He says that the guilty person is the a hole. Number two, research Weenie Earth. Okay. Okay. That's some hashtag, but thank you. All right. Hey, I'm glad you're here, Fish Nerd, Mary Beth. No problem. But on Vallow, about the testimonies, we were talking about the victim statements coming through before I got sidelined back again into the mistrial. I mean, let's just hope that that doesn't happen. And like I said, I understand your questions on it. I do. Well, I don't have a straight answer because I'm not legally. They're saying that any miss thing in an indictment can get this tossed, but it didn't during the trial. Okay. He asked for the mistrial during the trial and he didn't get it. Why he thinks he's going to get it after now that she's guilty, I don't know. Okay. Because if it would, I will say this from what I've heard from the lawyers, if she was up for the death penalty, the actual just that one digit on the indictment could have got her a mistrial right away. Her life was okay. Life in prison isn't the same thing. Okay. It would have been a little bit different. Okay. Although it's just as serious, it's life in prison. I think that perhaps she will not get it. I'm hoping she doesn't get it. But we are talking life here. And if she was going to a chair or anything like that, she probably would have got it during the trial when it happened, when it was brought to light. Okay. For the stuff with Hernandez, the juror, I don't think that's pertinent. Just because he took a couple of extra days to decide whether she did it or not, that's common in jury. They do debate with each other back and forth, you know. And you know, you and he's just exercising his right to talk on it. It was a horrific trial to go through. That's one of the things he said. Like he wouldn't want anyone to go through and see and hear what they heard. Okay. It was difficult. It was very, very difficult for them. And he's just doing his interviews. I really don't think that he said or did anything wrong by saying how difficult it was to decide and how he was actually not sure because they were talking murder. They didn't have a murder weapon. They don't have her at the scene of the crime. They don't have anything like that. It's mostly tied to the conspiracy to commit murder. And under the rules of the law, it says you can convict her of that murder if you feel, even without physical evidence, that she committed that murder, if you feel in all likelihood that she did under the conspiracy theory of what she laid the groundwork. And they did. They did. They definitely did. Exactly, Jujubee. And yet it's being used against him. He said, this is what you want from a juror. He gave it serious consideration and thought. And because there was so much done between character and actual evidentiary evidence. He was trying to focus on evidentiary evidence. And we're talking about physical type things, okay? But there was a lot of that. There was a lot of emails, there was a lot of phone calls, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of phone locations, this, that, and the other timeline stuff. There was things of that nature. There was the physical evidence of the bodies and what had happened in this testimony of people last time that they saw people at certain times and who was there and what. There was the physical evidence of her controlling the finances afterwards, of her not coming back and saying where the children were, not dealing with anyone who wanted to find out with that for months. Okay. There was some physical evidence of this, but it all ties into her like obscure, trying to keep people from knowing the truth. It all comes back to the distance. There's a lot of character evidence in regards to how she spoke about the religion, her involvement with Chad Daybell in regards to they were having an affair, the deaths of Charles Vallow, the death of Alex Cox, the death of uh, uh, Chad Daybell's wife Tammy. There was a lot to string together that looks more like characterization than actual evidence, but it is actual evidence. Okay. It actually is. And so this juror did express that there was some confusion amongst the juror on which type of evidence that it was, but not that it was evidence. And then he'd say it took him a couple more days to go through everything. And then he made his decision. And like Juju said, that's what I would want. I want a careful jury. Like if they had decided right away, they would be saying that they came back too fast, that they made their minds up without looking at the evidence. But anyway, the judge has ruled that only the immediate family will be able to speak at the sentencing. They are not going to be allowing Brandon Bordeaux or Lori's uncle Rex Connor or the aunt of Tammy Daybell, who is Vicky Hoban. They all petitioned to speak, and the judge has denied that. But he did put through that Kobe Ryan, her son, could. That Kay Woodcock could, but not her husband. He's not going to be. Larry Woodcock is not going to be allowed to speak. Okay. Um, but several people are. Her sister will be allowed to speak. Okay. Yep, the victim impact statements for a reason. There are several who were impacted, and their voices are not. There's several. They're not allowed to be heard. Okay. Well, her sister is actually going to be there for Ty Lee as a representative. She's going to speak for Ty Lee. Kay Woodcock is going to speak for JJ. Okay, and for herself, and then Colby Ryan will speak for himself and the rest of the family as to what she has done to their family. Um, and they're not going to be allowed to heard, but they have to go by timing too. The reason Brandon is not going to be, don't forget, they've still got the Arizona case. Okay. And because of Alex Cox, Brandon could possibly be part of that case. So we can understand why the judge doesn't want him in the impact statements there. Although they petitioned, you you know, it is hard to turn anybody away that wants to speak. But he's saying that because he said immediate family, that aunts and uncles are too distant. That's where he's going to draw the line, you know. Yep. Yep. That's it. And I agree with you always. It's always sad to turn anyone away who had anything to say. Um but I guess for expedience and to keep it from being what they would call like giving the defense even more to go with, uh they wanted to, just get those statements through as best that they can, you know. It is a victim's impact statement. It affected so many people. Um you just everyone. I mean, there were neighbors that wanted to testify. There's people all over. You could go into any of the groups and see people that from that area that knew that are greatly affected by the whole thing. Everybody involved with the search for the children, um, all of it. A lot of people have a vested interest. It's the judge's decision on how vested that interest in. As difficult as that is to understand, he has to draw the line somewhere. Well, okay, so I think I'm done with Lori if you don't have any more questions. I think that's about all that we have to think until the end of this July. I think that's might be all we have, unless more news, of course, comes through on the determination of whether there'll be a mistrial or not. The prosecution has answered. It is with the judge now, and we'll see if there's a motion. Well, okay, so on that, there's the next one I want to talk about before I finish up tonight, and just briefly, is on Bryan Kohberger. In with Bryan. Also, I wanted to give you the link I'm dropping right now is the appeal if you're interested into how they did that. Um Bryan Kohberger just had a hearing on Friday in regards to what we're talking about earlier, in regards to the media being able to cover this case. In the Kohberger case, in the Moscow murders case, there is a gag order, a serious gag order. Okay. And there's much contesting going on, mostly from the Gonzalez family. One of the victims' family has a lawyer who attended that case, of Shannon Gray, who attended that case and did a strong, gave their perception on why the gag order needs to be lifted. They said that they're being hindered from information, that they're not allowed to speak publicly on it and this, that, and they're not allowed to voice their opinion. And the judge in the Kohberg case, who, by the way, is John Judge, the Judge, yes, that's his name, Judge, pushed back a little bit and said that the gag order has not stopped the family from speaking out. They give regular interviews, and they are entitled to information from the prosecution. And the prosecution came forward after the statements of Shannon Gray, pushing very hard that their rights were being violated. Okay, that their rights, the victims' families' rights, were being violated by this gag order. And he said, you haven't stopped. And the prosecution has tried to give information to the family and asked to come talk to them several times. And it was the attorney, Shannon Gray, who stopped that from happening. And so that he actually came to court and misrepresented. Some of his statements actually misrepresented what was going on. And then the prosecution turned that around to say, and that's exactly what we don't want happening, that we don't want the prosecution's case picked apart by the media or the family. They're out there trashing the prosecution already, okay, and everyone else. And that can't happen for a fair trial. And you kind of understand their point, okay? Ann Tyler, who is Bryan Kohberger's attorney, um, appointed attorney, by the way, also stated that everything's being torn apart. What little was released has been analyzed over and over and over again. She actually even used the hearings that are actually being videotaped and said that people are on there doing body examinations, trying to decide for every word that he says whether he's guilty or not. Now we know that happens. I mean, it happens all over YouTube. It does. I mean, and there's really, I'm not going to say it's ever going to stop, because it's not. It's unreasonable to think that the media is not going to go on these sensational cases. Of course they are. Of course they are. Well, it's a matter of, there's a fine line on when does it actually hinder the case, and for who. The prosecution themselves don't want the gag order lifted because they say it'll hinder their case. In that case, I'm saying, well, if the defense doesn't want it and the prosecution doesn't want it, um, and already Judge thinks that it's going to be a problem, then maybe it needs to stay. Because if you're not directly involved with the case, uh, it's not hindering you from talking about it. Everything will come forward in trial, and you'll be able to talk about it as it gets presented. To have it all up front and discuss whether somebody's guilty or not, or what it means ahead of time, although great entertainment for all of us true crime fans, and man, we love it. And I can't believe I'm here talking, knowing that I come out here and say this stuff, knowing that gag order is going to keep real information from coming forward ahead of time. I get that. I get that. But in this particular case, watching what happened immediately with the Bryan Kohberger case, it was sensationalized. It's a absolute tragedy. It's unheard of that 4 young lives are gone that quick. And of course, everyone wants justice. And I do too. I want the victim's family, everybody, to get justice. Okay. But in this system here in America, Bryan Kohberger deserves an actual fair trial. And if the prosecution is saying they're having a hard time believing they're going to actually be able to present a fair trial under the circumstances if there's not a gag order, I think that speaks volumes to what needs to happen. I want full disclosure too. I do. I'm with a lot of the lawyers that say, how are we going to know what actually happens if we don't get to see it and what it means? Maybe they will actually let us see the trial. But for now, I think the gag order needs to stay in place. And actually, I think that's the compromise in this whole situation with all of these cases. If there was more of a gag order in place before, you wouldn't be able to be talking about the evidence before there's actually evidence. Because is it really evidence until it's presented in a court of law? No, it's just what they have and what they may use. Okay. We've seen so much of the Kohberger stuff already. Okay. We don't know what's going to present it in court. The jury, we should be looking at it the same as the jury. What legally gets presented as evidence and not all the other stuff. I think that'll help. I don't know. I think that might be a compromise. And I would love to see what you guys, because I know that you like this stuff as much as I do. I know. And I'm not trying to bash anyone in the community at all that does true crime or legal crime or any of it. You know, the legal channels, they have every right to see whatever they want, read those things, do whatever, what's available. Okay. Well, could it be a compromise so that media doesn't twist it? Because I don't think it's the legal channels twisting it. I don't think it's people like me that are twisting it. You know, I think it's the media slandering it to millions of people at a time, you know, with their headlines and what it is and what it actually means. Okay. With the purpose of making money. I get that. And I for anyone that wants a little bit of entertainment on the first part of this hearing from Friday with Kohberger, you could watch Emily Baker, especially the part where their expert witness brings up the chart for the defense on why this shouldn't happen, and they talk about all of these counts that are like non-expert voices on the issue, and they're just talking about social media, and she's going off about like that is the biggest point there at all, that we're all out here talking about it, everybody, not just the YouTubers, I'm talking about everybody, like every single person out on social media speaking on it was part of that chart, that the bad hashtags and all could, you know, taint the jury pool, change opinion, how do you get a fair trial, you know, this and that, maybe people won't come forward, nobody's gonna, you know, all kinds of different issues could come at bay. It's the compromise to keep the actual facts of the case a little more tight after the indictment. And, you know, once that, you know, do I want indictments to still be listed? Yes, I do. I want to know why somebody was charged. But that's it. That's it. You know, I don't want like all of the search and seizure stuff and this and that until it's at trial. Because often the defense will go for those procedures, so the search and seizure and everything like that. That can all be opened up during the trial or at the trial, you know, as it comes into evidence. Okay. With the Letitia Stosh, we saw that, right? We didn't really know everything. We saw her fighting back and forth in motions, okay, to keep certain things out, like her cell phone data in the films, you know, the inside camera views from her own security system and things like that, the neighbor security systems, things like that, the vehicle GPS services, all like that. You know, we saw her fighting on all of that, but we didn't know what that evidence actually was. We didn't get to see that stuff until they started releasing most of it. So maybe that is like somewhat of a compromise, you know. Yeah. It was I kind of agreed with Emily about it, that Emily Baker is, from what I understand that she's saying, is that she would like the cameras in the courtroom, especially based on what happened in Depp versus Heard. What can we actually squelch some of the media stuff prior to courts? If it means having an open court, I'm all for gag orders prior. I really am, because I think it's important to have the open court system. I'm with them on that. Live cameras, you see it for yourself. What actually happened in there? Because I was very disappointed lately in how a lot of things are portrayed in the media that actually happened in the court. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes and it wasn't getting reported. They were going off on a different tangent about it. It was ridiculous. It was very biased and very skewed, and many of us saw it. Many of us saw it. I think most of the legal channels that I follow, all were complaining about that at the time and still do. That it was so evident, the skewing and the bias in the media, even though they saw it with their own eyes. It was It was something else. Okay. So anyway, I kind of understand why the gag order is there. And I understand the victims' families' frustration, especially the Gonzalez family. They're fighting hard to get that gag order listed because they want to know what happened to their child. But the cruelty, the cruel fact is they may have to wait like the rest of us. They do get information from the prosecution, but they have to talk with prosecution to do it. And because they've got a lawyer to represent themselves on this gag order, that's been stonewalled. So I know what their purpose is, and I understand it, and I feel for them. I really do. I want them to get answers. I can't imagine what it's like to have a child gone from this world and not have an answer as to what's going on, and know that other people might have information and you don't have access to it. That has to be horrific. I feel for them. But as the victim's family, they are entitled to go to prosecution and work with them. But they're bashing prosecution instead, and they're making like really hard relationships here. And I think compromise might be better all the way around. I really do. Um, I don't know. That's just my wish. Who am I? Just a little bear. This time I'm looking at it. I want to actually see the trial have cameras. The pre-trial hearings have all had cameras in there, including the one from Friday where they all talk back and forth. Now, both the prosecution and the defense and the attorneys for the Gonzalez family and the attorneys for mass media, like mass media is in there too. They want it out. Like they want that gag order lifted because they want the prosecution to be able to leak stuff. They want to talk to law enforcement officers. You see, the gag order only affects those involved in the case. Prosecution and defense, lawyers and parties are not allowed to speak on it. Neither are any of the investigating officials and law enforcement officers involved or the witnesses. Nobody's allowed to speak on it. Okay. However, the family can talk about what they want. Okay. Nobody's stopping them. They're not sanctioned. The judge made a point to remind the attorney for the Gonzalez family the gag order has not stopped them from having as many press conferences as they want and talking to whoever they want in the media, because they have. Their voice is not being silenced. The way they're getting their information is being compromised, but mostly because of this lawsuit. They still could meet with prosecution, and prosecution said right in front of the judge that they have tried. Okay, so like I understand, but they have to do it the right way. I do. Even during a trial which is televised, we won't get access to all the evidence in the same way the jury will, and that is how it should be. It is a job to come to a verdict, not the victims' families. Exactly. Exactly, Liam. I think you understand how there's got to be that fine balance. There really does. Uh, I'm just little bit. You understand. Thank you, Mrs. Cassandra. Just made me giggle. Like I didn't think that the Gonzalez family has said to the media is very reason. I think what the Gonzalez family has said to the media is the very reason of the gag. Yes, because they misrepresented information and they made grieving accusations. Let's see. Because I don't want to act like I don't understand where they're coming from. I do. That pain, that need for answers is paramount. It's all they think about, and I get that. And they feel that people are not coming forward with things, but they don't, as the victim's family, they're not held to the same way of looking at it as the prosecution or the defense or even the judge. Okay, they got to keep the law there. They have to make sure Bryan Kohberger is, whether they think he's guilty or not, gets a fair trial. Okay, the Gonzalez family don't care about that, and I don't blame them. They want what they want. They want justice. They want answers. They want it all out there. They want it, but it's not going to happen that quickly. A lot of this is just going to delay it. I don't know, because when Judge, yes, that does just tickle me a little bit. When Judge actually asked the Gonzalez family attorney Shannon Gray, would it be better for the family if I said what they can and cannot talk about, or what and in what areas anyone can speak on this if I've drew parameters? And Shannon Gray actually said back, no, because you don't have the authority to do that. And the judge is like, mm-hmm, exactly. Exactly. I don't have the authority to do that. So the gag order is for the people involved in the case. The victim's family are not involved in the case like that. They get the same victim information anyway, but they have to meet with the prosecution to do it. It's not going to be through the public forum and all of that. It's going to be a little more difficult to get it, but they're still entitled to it. And the judge is saying that that's not what the gag order is there for. Okay. It's to keep the media from misrepresenting things and to not prejudice the jury pool. Let's be honest. This is a big case. It's everywhere in our country. Okay. It's not just in Idaho. Now, on the Vallow case, they had to move the case from Fremont to Ada County because they couldn't get a jury. Because of the amount of people that knew that was going on in that county. They only went one county over. The Kohbergr case, the Moscow murders, I think is big. And though, especially all this fighting going on legally about whether or not there's going to be a gag order and everything, it makes it enticing. Everybody's just waiting. They're going to jump on every little thing. Okay, it does tamper with the jury pool, and regardless of whether we think Bryan Kohberger did it or not, okay, which is unfair of us. I mean, we can look at the end of it. Still, we all are unfair when we judge them on what we hear right now because they have not gone to trial yet. We do not know what's going to be actually presented. Okay, the last thing that we saw publicly a record of that wasn't gagged out or redacted was something about some evidence that needs to be tested again by the defense, by their own lab, because it's under speculation. Okay, and that's what we're going back and forth on that. And it was ordered that would be opened. The prosecution in the defense allowed that to be released on the Idaho site through the judge as ordered on the 9th of June, that the testing would go through and blah, blah, blah. But they're not saying what it is. I mean, in most cases, it could have to do with, and this is speculation, but because that information is out there already, this is part of the problem. They were talking about the sheath that was found that this knife would have been in, and that there was some type of DNA evidence that they were able to link back to a family member of Bryan Kohberger, namely, I believe they are saying his father, through DNA that was gathered through the trash at the father's house. Okay, so there's going to be a whole bunch about that, whether that DNA, just like finding it, whether like because they had a search order, is it usable to tie into the victim and to tie into rather the suspect, to find out that he was the suspect. It's all going to be about how they kind of pinned down that it was Bryan Kohberger. Okay, is that they're talking about retesting some of this evidence and all, which is their right. Now they've left that out there, and so now the families all know that's being done. It's like they're not being that unreasonable. Okay, I don't think so. I really don't. But I understand why many want the courtrooms open. I don't really think it needs to be that open prior. um I love reading it, and that's actually like pulling the rug out from under my own feet, because what is the one thing I love to do like every day? Read legal documents. And like, if you can't read the legal documents because there's a gag order and they're not going to tell you what's going on in the case until you get to trial, well, that's going to actually hinder like some of my fun, some of what I do. But I think when it comes to evidence and things like that, it's important, because it's not evidence until it's presented in court. There was a lot of stuff in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard that we had seen put out on the internet, and we knew about, and Amber put it out, and Johnny put it out, and the lawyers put it out, and everybody was putting it out, and it never made it to the court. Okay, so you got to be careful. You got to be careful about these stuff, because I could tell you honestly, the amount of stuff I saw actually can prejudice you. I know I had a hard time when Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, and I had to start saying I am being prejudiced. I am being biased about it. I came into that trial not as open as I normally would. I don't know if the survivors are going to testify. We don't have witness lists yet or anything like that. The other information I have for you is that uh they're scheduled, in Latau County, they're scheduling that the Kohberger case for the Moscow murders is supposed to take place, the actual legal trial, on around October 6th of this year in 2023. Um the prosecution has 60 days to respond to Kohberger's actual request to have an additional more time to be able to present an alibi. Normally, you get like 10 days after your not guilty or guilty plea has been entered in to present your alibi, etc. Prosecution will have 60 days to answer to his request as to why he should or should not get an extension of that. However, let's remember that Bryan Kohberger had not entered a plea. The plea was entered by the judge because he wants more time. He keeps saying he needs more time. Okay, and so he has not said guilty or not guilty on his own behalf by Ann Tyler, his attorney, or himself. At arraignment, the judge has to, when no plea is put forward, enter not guilty, and that's what happened. Now they are talking about they need more time because of the amount of evidence that prosecution has put into discovery. They're talking about thousands and thousands of things to read and take care of and go through. And Tyler presented that also uh, uh, during the during this hearing that they had. Um, there's going to be a preliminary hearing at the end of June, and they're going to talk about it again and see what's going to happen. I think Ann Tyler's doing what she can for Bryan Kohberger. He was not in jail clothes. He was in a suit at this pre-trial hearing, and a lot of people made a big deal about it. He was quiet, he was stoic, he didn't talk. He let the attorney talk for him. I think that's reasonable. I don't know why they're saying anything um about that. Well, this murder happened November 18th of 2022, not that long ago. And this one's actually moving forward quite quickly. If we actually have a trial October 6th, that would be within a year of the incident. And I think everyone in Idaho and everyone involved, including the victim families, would be pleased to have this settled quicker rather than later. But Bryan Kohberger does deserve, a fair trial. And so I'm looking to see if that alibi statement will be public or if it's going to be under the gag order and redacted or held back. As it is right now, it looks like the defense and prosecution with the judge are going over everything that gets entered on whether it'll be released or not, on how prejudicial it will be to who to what. Um, but like I said, it is still both the prosecution and the defense's stance that they want the gag order to stay in place. And the judge is weighing it out now after hearing from the Gonzalez family's attorney in the media, the large conglomerate of media that is actually presented also with attorneys at the trial. Um, we'll see what he says. But like I said, go check out Emily Baker when they go over that graft. The graft really didn't do anything for me. I don't think it helped the defense that much, except for if you could read between the lines to say yes, that this does have an impact because the amount of people that are going to be talking about it is astronomical. Um, but let me just go through for some questions and then we're going to wrap this one up. I can't believe it. I made it all the way through. Oy. Eh. Okay. And it says media rode this case hard. It was crazy. Censorship would be better. I kind of agree on this one, Anna. Only because they had him guilty from the start, just based on who he was and where he came from. And I don't know if he's innocent or guilty. I mean, he could be a psychopath for all I know. I have no idea. I need to see more. I could say just the media frenzy enough scared me. Really, kind of scares me a bit. Is how hard everybody came out. you know, on that one. And welcome, Anna. It's nice to see you. Okay. People do need justice by court trial. It's fair. Exactly. Um, And again, I agree with you, Juju. The Gonzalez family, actually, what they're saying out there is one of the reasons for the gag order. They're putting speculation on everything. They're tinging the trial by saying there won't be a fair trial because prosecution is messing everything up already and favoring this and favoring that and saying nobody's caring about the victims. And I don't think that that's true. Protection of the victims also. A fair trial protects their justice. Okay, it does. All right. You don't want it overturned. You don't want it, mistrialed. You don't want to give you want it to just play out the best that it can for the prosecution against the defense. Defense gets the chance to go against it or not. And then the jury gets to decide. Okay. And you want the best equal playing field there so it doesn't get turned over. So justice, if the jury does come back with a guilty, that justice is served and it doesn't get overturned, it doesn't get delayed, and you don't go into another year or so of this, which would be heartbreaking for the family, and everyone. I know the word gag. I don't know what else to call it because it is a gag. That's what the judge is calling it. Like but like he said, he's not stopping the family. Liam says the purpose of a good justice system is to have decision made by someone other than the aggrieved. Uh, yes, because clear heads, right? Although they are affected by the evidence they see and what's going on, and I get that. You do you the aggrieved would not be able to weigh things out in a fair justice system. Yep. Otherwise, it is not much better than vigilantism. I get it. I'm not trying to judge Rocky Couch. I like Judge. He's doing the best he can. But I get it. I get it. Juju says, I legit do not know if he is guilty. Exactly. Are there tantalizing things people are saying? Yes. Yes, they are. Because, like, what? He was criminologist. He's like studying. He just wanted to be in forensics. He was all of this. Okay. It is very interesting. They made a lot about it. Then you got all that other stuff with that TikToker who's like blaming the other professor and they're suing each other back and forth. That is crazy. Like that is absolutely crazy. And that's the kind of stuff we're trying to avoid here, you know? Yep. Yes, Jujubee, in answer to your question, I was referring to Emily Baker's stream from today. And for future, because I mentioned it so much, I will actually link it in the description later when I'm done tonight. When I finish all the descripts of everything, I will put that there for you. Okay. Um, the only other thing I have, it's free on the Idaho website. They did not block the order for looking at this evidence. It is on the Idaho site. You can go there. The things that aren't blocked are all still there. Okay, they're just talking about like being able to come out and talk about evidence and things like that, or who's doing what. Okay, Juju, I'm with you. He's being convicted in the media. I support the gag order. I kind of do too. And I support it because I actually think it's best for the victims in the long run. Although I do understand the family wanting to do what they do, they're not really being gagged to talk about it or to express themselves in how they feel. They're doing it every day. But the gag order is there to get the best trial we can so that when the jury comes through with the verdict, that it stands and that's it. It's done. It's over. And that Bryan Kohberger gets a chance to represent himself in court against these charges fairly, and that the prosecution gets to actually put out the evidence in a fair way without it tainted and this, that, and the other thing in any way at all. This is a tumultuous case, a very emotional case. It's a college town full of people who all have opinion about this, and they all are caring very much about what happens here. They all feel invested in some way. Okay, so it's going to be really really difficult to keep things fair anyway, everybody's coming into this with some preconceived notion already, and we hardly saw anything. Okay, so it kind of pushes to me why the gag order could be there. Will media hate it? Yeah. Am I going to hate it? Yeah. I'm not going to like it. We're not going to know. You know how hard it is to search on stuff when you do not, like, I'm not a millionaire. I don't got money to be sending investigators out to get all these forms for me and stuff like that. Like, I deal mostly with the free content. Yes, I have a Pacer account, for federal stuff. Remind you, federal. You can't get a lot of criminal stuff in Pacer or anything like that. You got to go right to the states, and it's whether they actually put criminal charges up there or not. A state like Idaho does put up high-profile cases. Daybell's is up there, Kohberger's is up there, Lori Vallow's was up there, but now that it's gone to verdict, it's been removed. So the appeal was a little harder to get, but it was still public, and we were still able to get it. And I did post it there, and I will make sure it's in the description link for you. But I do think in this case with Kohberger, the way they went so hard, and granted, it was sensational, and there was a lot to talk about. But do we really need 4-hour videos on what he wore in court and what he said when he said nothing? Probably not. Probably not. Even Emily Baker, you'll notice in her thing, like when it said that there was a part 2 to the thing, she was like, "Well, I'll get it for you later." But like, really, it's not like it doesn't. There's not that much sensationalism about it. Yes, straight facts. She gave some really good points on why she wants a public. She wants cameras in the courtroom. And she did complain about the quality of the cameras and the sound in the courtroom, and I don't blame her because we know from the Starch trial that was horrific. Like that was horrible. But the Starch trial alone, that was public. Okay, I think they could have did a better job with it, but the type of evidence and all that was put out there, that would have been quite damaging to a lot of people. But like I said, we're all adults. You're going to look at it if you want to. I know I would want to do it again, even what I heard. But there was a reason, in just based on her actually trying to represent herself, or at first, saying that no one could understand. Writing that crazy letter to the judge the first time is what did it for me. That's why I started following it. I'll be honest. She wrote that crazy letter. I'm firing on all my attorneys. You need to get rid of them. They don't listen to me. They don't understand. They're not doing what I'm saying. Only I can represent me. Only I understand me. Nobody else knows what's going on. They're not interviewing the right in. I need to be. She even tried to get like the witnesses to come to her so that she could actually interview them. She said she was being, she couldn't represent herself the way she was jailed. She was actually, wanted to get like special privileges and all this other kind of stuff so she could represent herself. It was a whole big thing, but it was enticing, and it's why I started. But when we got into the nuts and bolts of the case, we got down to actually the meat, it was pretty hard to stomach. It definitely was. Are you streaming the Kohbergr trial, Claire? I'll be there the whole time. I'll tell you this. That particular trial is going to be rough, but there's a lot legally there that, yes, I may want to, just based on what I saw so far. I can't give you the definitive answer. I'm leaning that way on Kohbergr and none of the others, actually, right now. Like, I definitely think Daybell, no way. Boone, I'm not so sure if that goes live. I doubt it. I don't think it's going to go live in Florida. I don't think they do that. But if Kohbergr goes live, and they may not, it's Idaho. It's Idaho. There's already gag order. The chances are pretty slim right now. But I'm considering it. Should you be? I don't know. It does sound, based on the level of prosecution attorneys in Ann Tyler, I would like to see Ann Tyler in action. That would be one of the things for me. I think she's defending very well right now. She's doing like the best that she can. I think they're being as careful as they can, and she's being very strong as far as they're very clear about protecting his rights as to a fair trial right now, and asking for all the time that they can get. She came into it a little bit late. And there was all that speculation on which she could even represent him, because she was listed in the department as someone that may have been with someone else involved in the case, one of the other relatives, and she never even talked to the person. But because her signature was on some of the files, because she works in that department, it got a little sketchy there. But that's the level of everybody coming at stuff here. So it's very high profile, very detail oriented. And I could say I might, but I can't say for sure. All right. Doing live trials, you guys will agree, is quite the endeavor. Okay, whether or not they actually even have it there in that county, I mean, that hasn't even started yet. It's all going to start coming up in pretrial stuff. I would imagine more and more motions will be coming forward, and there'll be more to talk about this before we get the trial. Yep. Is this in regards to this is in regards to Kohberg itself. Would someone with all that knowledge of evidence leave so much incriminating evidence, or is that a double bluff, or even that he isn't a good student? I'm not sure. I mean, or is he just that insane? It was part of his psychological studies. He's like a criminal forensic psychologist that he wanted to know what it was like, and he wanted to know how people would react because he actually saw somebody face to face, right? Before he left, casually walking out the door. He didn't run out. He didn't make sure he wasn't seen. Oh, there was noise. There was a dog. His car was in the area. It does look a little bit like that, Liam. I could see, but that's what trials are for. Like, we have to get all the evidence. It's the investigators' job to try to bring it all together the best that they can, and this is where they got led. I want to see where else they went, what else has been coming forward, and whether there's more to everything. But they think they have enough, and they indicted him. And there does look to be quite a bit of coincidences there and things like that, but we'll have to see. It's a college town, there's we even have survivors who are not willing to cooperate. Like, one of them doesn't want to talk to anybody, does not want to actually be anything, like just wants, like, it's too much. And I can understand that. We were talking about that before in other streams about the two girls that shared that house with them, like the positions that they are in and how they're getting tore up everywhere. Okay. How people that have the last name Kohberger that have no relationship at all are being tormented. Like, businesses are getting shut down because they think you have something to do with it. It's very, very prevalent in that area, how strong the emotion that people feel for this case. And you can't blame them. These were young college students, everybody, whole families, friends, everything, the whole community in an uproar. I can understand the volatile situation there at all, but it definitely a hot mess. If you go by the speculation and what is on social media, he does appear guilty. But when I look at it with an unbiased mind, there are some doubts as of right now. Exactly. The doubts in a messy scene like that, okay, where I have actually seen, and I have seen because they put it out there, pictures of the house with blood seeping through the floor, coming out. Like, what do you call that? Just leaking out to the outside of the house, drip through the crack there. We're talking a messy scene. We're talking people who were killed in their bed. They were stabbed multiple times. Okay. Um, and yet he walked calmly, dressed in black, by a witness. I don't know. Like, I don't know. And now the witness themselves is like a little iffy on some things. And granted, so I'm not challenging the witness at all, because I wouldn't want to be in that position. Uh, who knows what you would think, you see, in a house that you share with a whole bunch of people. You don't know their relationships. You don't know what the parties are going on. This is a college house. Come on. Like, these are college students. They were all out doing their thing before. They don't always know everything that's going on with each other just because they live in the same house. Like, this girl was getting persecuted. Okay. And I could just say, based on some defense attorneys in other trials that I've seen, where they pick on one word you say here and then another word you said there, uh, it's got to be a horrific situation to be in, you know. Yep. And I'm glad. Hey, T King, I'm glad you made it. But I think I'm going to wrap up. Let me just make sure I did as many questions. They all seem about the same. Um, Juju, if they lift that gag order, then people will be saying after the trial it went this way or that way because it was lifted. Keep it in place. Exactly. Because that will delay. That's my point. It's going to delay justice. Because if they lift it, they're going to say that Kohberger didn't get a fair trial. Okay. They're going to be looking for anything and they could. Okay. But it's going to be based on what happens during the trial. That's the only way you can get a mistrial is based on what happens during the trial, not before. Okay. But it does appear very prejudicial, Juju. I do agree with you. I want it to happen swiftly and go through, and I want everything to stay on track for October. That would be great. That everything gets like done for the victims' families and everybody who knew them. To tie it up, and for Kohberger himself. The legal system itself, the media itself. Don't taint the process. I agree, Liam. I I'm thinking hopefully that they don't, but we'll see. He is not going to order on it. I'm hoping we'll see something shortly. If I don't do a stream on it, I'll put it on the community tab. I've decided that some of these smaller things, little adjustments, don't have to wait weeks and weeks. That you guys that follow the channel will actually see it on the community tab and keep informed that way. Let me just see. I see a couple more tags I want to address before I finish off. Do you believe it will go smooth, or do you think there will be drama? I think in all trials there is drama. I think in some cases, just the way the prosecution and defense deal with each other can be quite entertaining. I learn something every time. I think just the types of evidence that will come forward, the witnesses, and I think the level of drama will depend on how media portrays things after the fact. To be honest. Um, when I mean media, I don't always just mean big mass media. I mean all of us here doing this too. We'll all be held to task to keep it as reasonable as we can as far as what we see and bias and just get the information out. Because you guys know here, when I do it, I'm not trying to persuade you one way or the other. I want you to look at everything yourselves all the time. I admit to being biased about certain things. I'm a human just like the rest of you, and I get my opinion. I don't have a legal profession that says I have to not have an opinion about it, to sway anything, and I don't process to be an expert in any of it. I'm just looking at it all the same way that you guys do, and then just talking about what I see, presenting it out, trying to get the facts to you the best that I can, clear up misinformation if I see it reported otherwise, and just say what I actually happened. Because I do see mass media misreporting a lot of it, you know, I do. Thank you, T King. I appreciate that. We discuss and disagree all the time here. That is why I enjoy it. All of you make me think through my conclusions. And that's how it should be. Because then you know when you finally come to how you feel about something, that you were open enough to hear all of it and everybody else's opinion about it. Now you're solid about what you saw and what you think, right? I mean, that's to me, that's the beauty of it. And if you can't look at the other side of it in anything, and this goes for everything, not just true crime, if you can't look at the side of anything and be open to hear the other people, then you really don't have a strong conviction for your own stance. If it can't be challenged, you can't look at it, and you can't actually, take in new information without turning upside down over the whole thing. You know, it is like we're a jury every time, and I want it to be like that. That is the part of the system I truly believe in. I truly do. T King, don't worry about it. I want everybody to be successful. I don't worry about things like that. So please don't. Yeah, I don't consider that you were being rude. I love that you're here. I know you're a supporter of mine, regardless of what you're going to do with YouTube or anything else. And I think most of you that have YouTube channels that are in my chat, you know, I support everybody, regardless of like what they're doing. I want all the smaller creators to get their names out there, and I'm never going to hold anybody back from anything. Um, Nobody owns any part of YouTube. It's a free enterprise, and it's huge, and everybody gets to watch what they like. Everybody gets to do what they want. I know, T King. It's cool. I just didn't want you to go away thinking that, because I would never think that. You know, it's wrong to be in an echo chamber. I agree with that, Mark. I absolutely do. It not only just wrong, it can be damaging to yourself. Okay, it can be, you're not doing yourself any good by eliminating the other voices. You're really not. If you're only listening to a few. Um, you got to be able to take in new information all the time. That's how we're designed as humans, okay? To free thought, free will, okay? In there's so much information. Who could ever say that they know everything about anything? No one. I challenge anybody to say that, because no one, no one, no one. Like, there's stuff changing all the time. You can have an opinion on Monday based on the information you had. And by the time Friday rolls around, you have a totally different opinion because you got new information the whole time. That's how trials work. That's how this information works with all this true crime. There's information coming in all the time, and it's our jobs to look at it and make sure that the opinion we have and how we're going forward, we're thinking about all of it. You can't just disregard it. It's not fair. And it wouldn't be the best opinion you could have. Like, you're not going with the all of the facts, all of the information. You can't possibly come to the best opinion for even for yourself, you know? So on that, I think I'm gonna go now, guys. Y'all have a great night. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. I'm gonna do a political review with quiz, and we've got some more things to get off my chest. Because not only with true crime, that's what I'm out here to do, is to talk about lots of stuff. Because everybody knows Bear just likes to talk, and I want open discussion about all of it. There will be some controversial things because it is politics, but I welcome you all to come. I don't shut people down, but just like in all of my chats, if you're not respectful to everybody there, including the guests, the panel guests, or the creator, and everybody in the chat, then you will be gone. You'll be sent to your room to think about your rudeness for a while. My mods will do it, because we're done playing with trolls and that. We want to have conversations, okay? And if you want to contribute to the conversation, the actual conversation that's happening at the time, not something from 2 years ago or something that's not relevant. Like, come on, this is what it's about. Have the discussion, have the conversation. You don't have to agree with us. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can't be like obnoxiously rude about it, and you can't just try to come and derail the whole conversation for your own agenda. It's no longer going to be tolerated. And that's all I got to say about that. You all have a great night. I'm so happy so many of you were here. I know I've been a little sketch, but I'll try to get things up sooner so you know what's going on. Do me a favor, like, share, comment, try to do what you can to get this back in the algorithm, whatever. Just a little hello on the back of a video will work. Um, I hate doing that kind of stuff, but now I realize I have to, because if they're going to keep throwing me out, then stubborn bear that I am, I'm going to keep fighting to get back in. Okay. All right. Y'all have a really good night, and I will talk to you later.